My name is Ben and I'm from University Centre Peterborough. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, my name's Karen Woodcock and I'm from Family Action in Peterborough.
What sector is your company based in?
Okay, the company as a whole is in the private and voluntary sector. We're a registered charity.
What does your service offer?
Okay, so my part of the organisation is that locally I offer an early years service. So I'm employed as the early years manager. What that means is we've currently got 6 preschools that are dotted around Peterborough. So I'm ultimately responsible for running those. And then alongside that, I will do other early years work that Family Action as an organisation asked me to get involved with. And I also sit on various project boards, steering groups, etc., that are part of the local authority.
Does this apply to a regional, national or global market?
I would say it applies to all, but obviously within early years there are vast differences. If you're looking at global, there would be vastly different approaches to early years and early years education. So what we're doing is obviously very much just in line with the national.
How many people work within the service?
Okay, so within my early years service in Peterborough, we've currently got 48 staff. That includes 3 that work as sessional workers for us.
What makes your company stand out to your customers or clients?
I think because we're part of a bigger thing, so obviously there are lots of early years settings ranging from childminders working at home through to big company-led day nurseries. But as is part of a charity, and so it comes from a charitable ethos, and the clue is in the name, Family Action. It's all about supporting families. So we're able to do things a bit more holistically. So as well as running preschools, we do have the ability to signpost and support families to other services that we might offer, and also through our networking we have lots of other organisations that we can signpost people through. So it's a slightly bigger offer than the standard.
Now for more of a local perspective, what do you do?
Okay, so my job is very varied. Every day is different. The big part of it is obviously running the preschools, so making sure that we're meeting all of the legal requirements around that, and making sure that the children are safe and that they are happy and that their learning's being progressed. So there's an element of quality assurance in my job. Going out and visiting the preschools, that's been challenging in the current climate, but we're still finding ways to do that. And just supporting each setting staff team with any issues that may arise. So there's quite a lot of HR work involved. I'm also involved with recruitment for the early years team. On top of that, I do wider work. So Family Action sometimes asks me to be involved in other projects. So I've done things recently like support our mother and baby unit that has a nursery in Style Prison, which is up near Manchester. I work with a task group for head office, which is putting together a manual, like a toolkit for other settings that want to start up a preschool elsewhere in the country. And I also get involved in anything that the local authority asks me to be involved with, which we'll probably talk about in detail later. But that's usually it pilots, projects and steering groups.
Yeah, that's great. How long have you been doing it for?
So I've worked for Family Action for about nearly 18 years now, not always in this role. So I started as a preschool assistant, so I started hands-on working in a setting, then worked through and managed a couple of settings for them, and then eventually we wanted to start growing the business. I think we had 3 preschools at that stage, and so my role was created, and then part of what I do as well is to grow the business and look for opportunities to open new settings.
How did you get involved in it?
My background originally was retail, so I worked in retail and worked through that to management. But when I had my own children, I did a lot of voluntary work around early years and was very interested. I do have a degree, and part of that was a year spent studying child psychology, development and learning. So there's always been an interest there, but I would say that it grew as I had my own children, and then I got that bit of hands-on experience.
What kind of projects are you working on right now?
Working at the moment on quite a few things that are linking in with local authority and other local partners. So there's a lot of focus on raising quality of communication, speech and language at the moment. I'm working on several projects, but they all kind of interlink around that, and do a lot of work on getting children ready for school. So I'm part of something called START, which is the Local Authority School Readiness Board. So we do a lot of work around supporting parents with some practical ideas of how they can help their child to be more independent and ready for school. And on the back of that, we're doing a lot of work with local schools at the moment. So trying to build new relationships with the schools that our children will move to, so that we can do things throughout the year to support the children to have better outcomes when they move on.
What are your favourite parts of the job?
Favourite parts are children, obviously. It would be wrong if it wasn't. Sadly, this year it's been really difficult to have that close contact with them. So I've missed that massively, but I really enjoy their company, and I really enjoy seeing the progression that they make. So seeing a child start with us at the beginning of the year and seeing often a different child by the end of the year, that is really rewarding. Also really enjoy watching our staff teams and the way that they all work differently but to the same common goal, and watching them progress. So it's great when you have maybe a new member of staff who's perhaps a little less confident, and really seeing what their skills are, and watching those build and develop. So enjoy that, and I enjoy the fact that every day is different.
What do you think are the skills needed for your job?
For my job specifically, I think you need to have a passion for early years. You need to feel that it's an important sector and an important part of a child's development. You need a lot of organisational skills. You definitely need to be a good communicator. Things fall apart if you can't communicate well. So as part of that, you need to be a people person. You need to enjoy meeting people and communicating with them. Obviously, you need to have some pretty sound underpinning knowledge on the sector that you're working in, and also on the way that young children learn and develop. And a sense of humour really helps. So yeah, all of those things combined.
How do you network?
There's various ways of networking, and that obviously again has been a bit challenging in the recent year, but some of it is virtual. So there's a number of Facebook groups now that are specifically for early years, so that's quite a good way of networking. There's lots of opportunities that come through the local authority, so that might be training events that they put on, or information sessions that are good for networking. There are also cluster groups that we meet up with other practitioners, and then these various projects and steering groups that I sit on are great for networking. Also, we link with local feeder schools, local children's centres, and local community groups as well, particularly as Family Action. So, we have good partnerships with people like Cross Keys Homes locally. We'll build connections with local churches, and all of those things. It's amazing how everything interlinks. The more people you talk to, the better it is for everybody.
What changes have you seen in your sector in the last 5 years?
As a sector, there's been some changes in the curriculum, in the expectations of how we're going to deliver that, and some changes in the way that Ofsted inspect. So that's always a movable feast, and it's about to change again in September. There's been some changes to the early years foundation stage. I think there's always shifts in focus. So I think that's probably the same for any industry, but over 5 years you see a shift in what's deemed to be most important. At the moment, very much I think around children's vocabulary, their speech and communication in general, and also around their independence and their emotional well-being, which I think is going to be particularly important in the coming years for children that have perhaps missed out a little bit. There's been changes from funding point of view, so there's been extra funding opportunities for parents. There's been the introduction of funding for eligible 2-year-olds. There's been the introduction of extra funding, 30 hours for parents that are working. So that's had an impact for parents, but it's also had an impact on us, because it means that we're now being approached to take a lot more of the younger children into preschool. I think sort of 5 years ago, a lot of preschools perhaps wouldn't have very many 2-year-olds, if any at all. And now we are receiving lots of requests, and that has a big impact because of the legal ratio requirements. So it can have a financial impact. You basically need more staff the younger the children. So that's been different. And then there's obviously been some differences, sort of more environmental, around the children and the families that are coming to us.
What are the developing opportunities for your sector?
Yeah, developing opportunities at the moment, certainly a lot more things that are virtual. I think that's happened for a lot of companies over 2020. So there are lots of opportunities now for us to share with parents early years apps, for example. So there's one, 50 things to do before you're 5. There's another one called Easy Peasy. And these are ideas, really simple, that just ping onto a parent's phone daily if they want it to, with suggestions of activities and things that they can do with their child. And so those opportunities are really great for us, because it builds a better connection between us and the parents, and we're kind of working together. So that's been impact. And I think there's an increased willingness to work together. There seems to be a lot more now where you have people from different organisations that previously might have almost competed against each other because they were working within the same sector. But there's much more willingness to work together towards a common goal. And this is what some of the work that I'm working on at the moment is, where you're having a shared approach to one subject and looking at how you can all feed into that.
What are the developing pressures for your sector?
Financial, definitely. Obviously, in recent years, there's been fairly regular rises now in the minimum wage, quite rightly so, but the funding that we receive has not increased in line with that. So that's difficult. So every time you have a rise in a minimum wage, it obviously has a knock-on impact for those people that are sort of higher up the management chain as well. You have to maintain the differentials in pay. So financial's been difficult. There's other costs have risen, as always, utility costs, etc. So I think financial is a real struggle. Locally, I don't know if this is a national thing, a lot more children that are coming to us now that have additional needs, and that brings with it extra pressures. We can't receive funding for one-to-one support for those children locally. You can get some additional money that helps you to work towards their targets, but you certainly don't get money in early years in Peterborough to have one person assigned to that child at all times, and we're seeing a rise in that. And alongside that, it brings extra work, obviously, from a paperwork point of view. Also, quite an ongoing and increasing safeguarding workload. So we do have a lot of families that we work with that there are ongoing social care involvement, and again that adds to the pressure, because we want to do our very best to support those families. That again involves staff being involved in taking part in meetings and taking time away from what they would normally be doing in the preschool. And I think increasingly we have a very diverse community in Peterborough, and I think the spread of that has started to alter. So when I first started, there were pockets of the city where you had a lot of families that had English as an additional language. Now that's more generally spread, and so we do find that we have an increase across all the preschools of families where we've got the extra challenge, not so much with the children, to be honest, but with the parents, that sometimes we've got really important information that we want to communicate with them, and it's not always that straightforward to be able to do it.
What organisations or professional bodies represent your sector?
Okay, so within early years, obviously we're regulated by Ofsted, and also you've got the local authority that will oversee and support what we do, and very often fight our corner as well. There are various other organisations that are available to support people, like the National Day Nursery Association, the Early Years Alliance. So those are organisations, usually charity status or a combination of charity and company, that are available if you want them for extra support, advice, just top tips on practice, that kind of thing.
What skills does your company or department most value in your employees, and why?
So if we were looking for someone within the early years, obviously we're going to need somebody that has good level of understanding of why it is that children, how it is that children learn and develop. But I think that really important for us is that people have an enthusiasm and a passion for what they're doing, that they can bring some energy with them, and that they are genuinely people, and that they can communicate well. So if people come to us and there's a spark about them, and we feel that they're able to engage really well with the children and with the adults, then everything else can be built on from that.
What are your company's or department's top 3 interview questions, and what are you looking for in the answers?
Okay, so fairly standard, I'm sure, for most companies. We always ask about why it is that you're interested in working for Family Action, and specifically why that role. So what the sort of answers we'd be looking for there are people that have actually taken a little bit of time to research Family Action, which is quite easy these days. Obviously, we have a website. We'd be looking for people that understand a little bit about our ethos, that we are there for families as a whole and agree with our ethos. So that would be an important one. Obviously, within the early years interview, I am going to be looking for a good understanding of how young children learn and progress. It doesn't have to be an excellent understanding, because as I said earlier, we can build on that, but there should be some underpinning knowledge there. And definitely, as I said before, just some enthusiasm for the role that they're applying for. Something that shows us that they have a genuine interest in working with the young children.
What other roles does your company or department employ?
Within the early years, first of all, locally, so obviously we've got my role. We offer preschool assistant posts. We also have senior roles within the preschool, so each one would have a deputy supervisor and a supervisor who's responsible for the day-to-day running. We also employ people on a sessional basis, and they are available to help us with cover, which is quite frequent. It can be because of illness, it can be because we've got staff that are booked to do training. So there's the option for sessional work. We have some assistants who don't have to have the early years qualifications. They come in and do more like a lunch cover role for us, which is invaluable. It helps us. They look after the children, keep them safe while they're having their lunch, and it gives staff an opportunity for their break. And we also have a role which is just a single role, which is for an early years pupil premium lead practitioner. That's quite a specialist role, and they go around all of our settings offering targeted support for children that are in receipt of this EYPP funding. As an organisation, all kinds of roles. We have things like allotment projects going on, lots of family support projects, so you need people that have got training in that. And
now about a career in your sector, what advice do you have for someone wanting to work in your sector?
Okay, if you're thinking of working in early years, I would definitely try and get some experience under your belt, and just to try it out and make sure that really is it can seem like a really good idea to spend all day with small children, and then some people find actually that's not for them. So How you do that, we certainly are happy to take volunteers, and I think most early years settings will take volunteers. So if you can do some voluntary work, that's always a good idea. If you are doing a childcare course and as part of that you'll be asked to do childcare placements, I would recommend that you really commit to them. So if you're looking for a career, you really need to commit to your attendance and your energy and enthusiasm while you're on placement. I would advise people to make sure that they are following the correct qualification course. So there are early years qualifications which are deemed to be full and valid by Ofsted, and so when we're employing people, that's what we need. Get a number of people that, for example, that have done health and social care qualifications come to us. Unfortunately, that is not recognised by Ofsted as full and valid for early years work, so it's just sort of having a think before you start your qualification. And there's also quite a large number of online courses now to be very wary of that will say that they are a level 2 or level 3 in early years and childcare, but are actually not full and valid because they are not long enough or involved enough. So yeah, just check that you're following the right course.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.